parable of the marriage feast. In a far-off kingdom, a great king prepared a magnificent wedding feast to celebrate the marriage of his beloved son. It was a celebration unlike any other, a banquet with tables adorned with the finest dishes, the aroma of roasted oxen and prepared delicacies wafting through the halls, and the air alive with anticipation. Every detail had been carefully planned, for this was not just any feast, it was a declaration of joy, unity, and love. The king, eager to share this joyous occasion, sent out his servants to summon those who had been invited. These were no ordinary guests. They had received invitations long before, given the honor of attending this royal celebration. Yet, when the servants arrived at their doors, they were met with resistance. Some dismissed the invitation outright, shaking their heads as they turned back to their daily routines. Others shrugged, more concerned with their farms and businesses than the king's feast. Still worse, some reacted with hostility, seizing the servants, mistreating them, and even killing them. When word of this reached the king, his heart burned with both grief and fury. These people, who had been chosen to share in his joy, had repaid his kindness with indifference and violence. Enraged by their actions, the king sent his armies to bring justice to the murderers and to destroy their city, cleansing the kingdom of their treachery. But the feast was still prepared, and the king's determination to celebrate was undeterred. He turned to his remaining servants, his voice resolute. "The wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Go, therefore, to the main highways, and as many as you find there, invite to the wedding feast." The servants obeyed, venturing into the streets, the bustling marketplaces, and even the quiet corners of the kingdom. They extended the invitation to everyone they encountered, the rich and the poor, the good and the bad alike. One by one, they came, a diverse crowd filling the grand hall with laughter and amazement. The once empty banquet room was now alive with guests, their hearts alight with the joy of being welcomed into the king's presence. As the festivities began, the king entered the hall to greet his guests. He walked among them, his heart swelling with satisfaction at the sight of the celebration. But then, his gaze fell upon a man who stood out, not for his presence, but for his attire. While others wore wedding clothes befitting the occasion, this man had made no effort to prepare, his clothing starkly out of place in the grandeur of the feast. The king approached him, his voice firm but not unkind. "Friend," he asked, "how did you come in here without wedding clothes?" The man stood speechless, unable to offer an explanation. His silence spoke volumes, for it revealed not ignorance, but a lack of respect and readiness for the occasion. The king, seeing the man's disregard for the honor he had been given, turned to his servants. "Bind him hand and foot," he commanded, "and throw him into the outer darkness. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." The hall grew quiet, the weight of the moment settling over the guests. The king's justice was clear. Though the invitation was extended to all, the honor of attending required a heart prepared to accept it with gratitude and respect. As the celebration continued, the king's words lingered. "For many are called, but few are chosen." Those who had gathered understood the gravity of the parable. The kingdom of heaven is like this feast, open to all who would come, yet calling for hearts ready to embrace it. And in the king's feast, they glimpsed the boundless generosity and justice of the one who invites all but asks for faithfulness in return. Tribute to Caesar. The sun hung high over Jerusalem, and the temple courtyard buzzed with activity. Pilgrims, traders, and religious scholars mingled, the air alive with conversation and debate. In the midst of this, Jesus stood, teaching to a gathered crowd. His words, as always, carried an authority that both inspired and unsettled those who heard them. Among the onlookers were a group of Pharisees and Herodians, watching him with calculating eyes. They had spent days plotting, searching for a way to discredit him, to trap him in his words, and turn the people against him. Today, they thought, was the day. Approaching with a false air of respect, they began to address him. "Teacher," one of them said, his voice smooth and insincere, "we know that you are truthful and teach the way of God in truth, and you defer to no one, for you are not partial to any." The words were a thin veneer of flattery, masking their true intentions. "Tell us then," another added, his tone sharp with challenge. "What do you think? Is it lawful to give a poll tax to Caesar or not?" The question hung in the air, deceptively simple yet loaded with danger. If Jesus answered, "Yes," he risked alienating the Jewish people, who resented Roman rule and the oppressive taxes that came with it. If he answered, "No," he could be accused of defying the authority of Rome, a charge that carried dire consequences. The Pharisees and Herodians smirked, confident that they had placed him in an impossible position. But Jesus, ever perceptive, saw through their malice as clearly as the midday sun. His gaze swept over them, steady and piercing, and his voice cut through their duplicity. "Why are you testing me, you hypocrites?" he asked, his tone firm but not angry. The crowd grew silent, their attention riveted on the exchange. Jesus continued, "Show me the coin used for the poll tax." One of the Herodians reached into his pouch, producing a denarius, its silver surface catching the light as he handed it over. Jesus held the coin up, the inscription and image of Caesar clearly visible. "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" he asked, holding the coin aloft for all to see. "Caesar's," they replied, the words falling from their lips almost mechanically. Then Jesus spoke, his answer simple yet profound, carrying a truth that transcended their petty schemes. "Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." The Pharisees and Herodians froze, their trap undone. His reply was brilliant in its clarity, sidestepping the snare they had laid while delivering a message that left no room for argument. The coin, bearing Caesar's image, belonged to Caesar, but the hearts and souls of the people belonged to God alone. The crowd murmured in amazement, their admiration for Jesus growing with each word. Even his enemies, silenced and stunned, could find no rebuttal. They exchanged glances, their earlier confidence shattered, and retreated quietly, leaving the temple with nothing to show for their scheming. As the crowd dispersed, Jesus remained, unshaken and resolute. His words lingered in the minds of those who had heard them, not just a clever answer to a trick question, but a reminder of where their true allegiance should lie. And in that moment, they saw once again that no earthly power could entangle the wisdom of the one who carried the authority of heaven itself. Jesus answers the Sadducees. It was a day charged with tension and debate as Jesus continued to teach in the temple courts, his voice steady amidst the murmurs of the crowd. The Sadducees, who prided themselves on their denial of the resurrection, saw an opportunity to challenge him. With carefully crafted words, they approached, their faces betraying a mix of arrogance and curiosity. "Teacher," one of them began, his tone edged with mock sincerity. "Moses said, if a man dies having no children, his brother as next of kin shall marry his wife, and raise up children for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, and having no children, left his wife to his brother. The same thing happened to the second and the third, down to the 7th. Last of all, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife of the 7 will she be? For they all had married her." The group stood back, their question hanging in the air like a trap set to snare him. To them, the scenario highlighted the absurdity of resurrection, a belief they dismissed outright. The crowd watched in anticipation, many intrigued by how Jesus would respond. Jesus, unshaken, looked at them with a steady gaze and said, "You are mistaken, not understanding the scriptures nor the power of God." His words cut through their intellectual pretenses, challenging the very foundation of their question. "In the resurrection," he continued, "they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven." His answer shifted their perspective entirely, revealing a reality beyond their limited understanding. The resurrection was not a continuation of earthly structures, but a transformation into something greater. "But regarding the resurrection of the dead," Jesus added, his tone firm yet instructive, "have you not read what was spoken to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? He is not the God of the dead, but of the living." The truth of his words struck the crowd deeply. Murmurs of astonishment rippled through those gathered, many marveling at the wisdom and authority he displayed. The Sadducees, caught off guard, found themselves unable to counter his argument, their attempt to discredit him unraveling before their eyes. Not far off, the Pharisees watched closely, their own resolve hardened by the sight of the silent Sadducees. Gathering together, they plotted their next move. One among them, a lawyer known for his sharp mind, stepped forward to pose his question. "Teacher," he said, his voice confident yet probing, "which is the great commandment in the law?" Without hesitation, Jesus replied, his voice carrying the weight of eternal truth. "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets." The crowd listened intently, the simplicity and depth of his words leaving many in awe. The Pharisees, however, remained restless, their challenge once again met with wisdom they could not refute. Then, turning the tables, Jesus addressed them directly. "What do you think about the Christ?" he asked. "Whose son is he?" "The son of David," they replied, their voices unified. Jesus nodded, but his next question unsettled them. "Then how does David, in the Spirit, call him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand, until I put your enemies beneath your feet'? If David then calls him Lord, how is he his son?" The Pharisees fell silent, the complexity of his question leaving them without an answer. Their attempts to challenge him had only highlighted their own limitations. From that day on, they dared not ask him another question, his wisdom proving unassailable. The crowd dispersed, many carrying with them the profound truths they had heard. Jesus, unyielding in the face of opposition, continued to teach, each encounter further revealing the depths of his understanding and the authority of the one he represented. And though the challenges would keep coming, so too would his answers, answers that spoke not just to the mind, but to the heart of God's eternal kingdom.